Welcome y'all back to Whiplash TV. Thanks for coming back to check out another video here on the channel. Today we are back on the 2012 Chevy Silverado LTZ. Of course, if you've been following along, you know it's got a 6.2 V8 in it. So it's got some muscle, it's got some power, it's loaded, and I love this truck. And today we've got to do something about that stance. I've got some new wheels and tires for it and a lift. We're gonna go check it out and get right to work. All right, so here's the wheels that I got for the truck. They're made by Wicked Off Road, and they're a 22-inch diameter by 10-inch wide. I picked the black and milled ones. So these spokes have this milled section. These spokes are completely just gloss black. The gloss black finish is really nice, and I really like that they have a concaveness to them. So the center of the wheel is further in, and the spokes come out towards the edge of the wheel a little bit. And then you still have a lip on the edge of the wheel. And you can kind of see from this angle how the wheel has that concaveness to it. I think these are going to look amazing. So these wheels actually have an advertised weight of 45 pounds when you look at them on the website. But when I put them on my scale, they actually weigh 36.2 pounds. So I mean, for a 22 by 10 inch wheel, I think that's pretty lightweight. Alright, so now it's time to take these over to the tire shop, and I'm going to get them wrapped in some tires. I'll show y'all what I picked out for that once I get them mounted. Here's the lift kit that I got from KSP Performance. This is supposed to raise my 2012 Chevy Silverado 3 inches in the front and 2 inches in the rear. Most say that you end up with a total of 1 inch higher sitting in the back than the front, which is completely fine with me. I have a heavier tonneau cover in the back, and also I'll probably want to tow some stuff at times, so that'll work out just fine for me. So let's take a look at this kit. I will have a link down in the video description for all of these parts I'm showing you today. I went with the KSP Performance Aluminum kit to try to keep weight down, and just instead of getting cheap steel parts. So these front spacers are going to sit at the top of the strut, which I'll show you because we're going to install these. These are made out of a solid piece of aluminum, so they're a lot lighter than if this was an actual chunk of steel. So in this box comes 2 of these. They are 2 inches tall, but because of the geometry of the suspension, it's going to give us 3 inches of lift. In the box is also the other one, and also the hardware that's needed to install these. So that'll handle the lift on the front. And then to handle the lift on the rear, the kit comes with these blocks. These are going to go between the leaf springs and the axle. Currently on the truck is a 1 inch block, which comes factory, and that will be taken out and it will be replaced with this block here. So this block, it is a 3 inch block, so it's going to give you an actual 3 inches of lift. Now it is tapered just a little bit, about 1/8 of an inch towards the front. That's going to help you keep your pinion angle at the correct angle. So included in the kit is these brand new U-bolts. They are a lot longer than the factory ones because of the lift block. So all the parts I just showed you handle the lift in the front and the lift in the rear. Now another thing that I got from KSP Performance is these polyurethane sway bar end links. So when I bought the 2012 Chevy Silverado, I actually had a couple pieces of the rubber that go in there missing from my sway bar end links. So I decided to go ahead and do an upgrade because this will help with handling, and it's also going to replace my worn out sway bar and link bushings. So in the box comes 2 of these. And then also, some of you are probably going to say, oh, well, you're going to lift the front end 3 inches just by doing a spacer. That thing is going to ride terrible. Your ball joint's going to be at a bad angle. Well, I got a fix to help the suspension ride good and fix that ball joint angle. I got the KSP Aluminum UCAs, which is upper control arm. So if you look at these, they're engineered to where they can accept a 2 to 4 inch lift because of this arch, which is going to help the correcting of the angles because of us going up with our lift 3 inches. And then the ball joint is sitting straight down like this. That's going to keep the ball joint from getting into a bind. This kit also comes with the greasable ball joint. It also comes with a KSP cap that is going to sit right here. Looks super nice. And it comes with polyurethane bushings, which are going to go in here. So brand new bushings, brand new ball joints on the upper control arms. So the final piece to our puzzle is a set of rear Bilstein shocks. Let's take a look at these. So what we have here is a set of Bilstein 5100 shocks for the back of the Silverado. These are supposed to be good for a stock height Silverado or even up to a 1 inch lift. Now I know that we're doing a 2 inch lift, so technically that's outside of their parameters, but this is a longer shock than the factory one, and it will work. It will be just fine. So when we lift the front end with that 2 inch spacer, which is going to give us 3 inches of lift, it will make the front of the truck be a little stiffer. So it's a good idea to have a little bit of a stiffer valve shock in the rear to help match the ride that's going on in the front. So that completes all of the things that I have today to lift the truck and make it ride good in the back, and those upper control arms and the sway bar end links. So again, all the links will be in the video description for every single part that you see here used today. Alright, so we're going to work on the back end to get these U-bolts off and get the stop block off. So to do that first, you have to jack up your truck and you have to get a jack stand, which is right there, up underneath the frame, so then you can work your jack underneath the axle to be able to get it down. Also, it makes it a lot easier, even if you're not changing out wheels and tires, to take your wheel and tire off. That way you can get to the U-bolts easy, and you have lots of downward travel for your axle while you're doing the new blocks and new U-bolts. And we'll also get the new shocks put on. So to start with, we're going to go ahead and take our U-bolts out, and then we're going to slowly let it down with the jack. These U-bolt nuts are a 21 millimeter. Alright, and then you're going to take your bottom plate off of the U-bolts, just like that. Keep it in the same orientation, and then you're going to pull out your U-bolts. And then we'll do the same to the other side, and then we'll let the axle down slowly. So next up, before we start lowering the axle on down, we're going to take this shock load off of the axle, so that way it's not messing with it or twisting it. So we're going to take those off and get those out of here. So it'll come on out just like that. And then up at the top, You've got a bolt up there through the top, so take it loose and then pull your shock out. Alright, so now we got our shocks completely out on both sides, which will let your axle rotate. And then also I have a second jack right up here in front of the pinion. So that way, as I lower the axle down, it's going to give us some support. And you can use both jacks to get the axle at the exact angle that you want it to be at for putting in your new blocks. So we're about to lower it down and pull these blocks out. When you're doing this, you're going to have a line right here that gets tight. And I'm just going to pop this right out of the frame right there, because we need more room to get our block in. So you can just put your tool in right here and just go ahead and work that right out of the frame. So then that way it gives you a lot more slack for it to come down. So now we have enough separation that we can get the old block pulled out of here. Then we're going to take our new block with this nub facing down. So we're going to put the thicker part of the block towards the back and the smaller part of the block towards the front. Just like that right there. And then we're going to line up that hole at the top of it with the pin going through the leaf springs. So next up, you're going to set your new U-bolts in, and then down here at the bottom, we're going to reinstall that bottom factory plate to the U-bolts. Alright, so once you get your plate in, then you're going to put your washer and then nut on each one of your U-bolts and start working them up by hand. Then the next thing we have to do is look at our block, and we have to look at this hole and bolt line up through our leaf spring. Alright, so we have a bolt going through here, and there's a hole right where this indentation is. So as we get these U-bolts cinched on up, we have to make sure that that lands right inside of there. Alright, so here's the finished product in the rear. We've got our new blocks in, and then we've got our new Bilstein Shocks in. They fit just fine. This is pretty much fully extended right here. Everything's in and tight, so now it's time to put 2 of the new wheels and tires onto the truck. So the first thing that we're going to do now on our front end is we've got the front tires off, and then we are going to remove the sway bar end link. We're going to get this sway bar end link off since we have new ones, and it will let the suspension articulate and come on down much easier and not be held on by the sway bar. So that's going to come off first, and then you're going to need to undo your ABS right here, which is on the upper control arm. Get those 2 pulled off, and then we'll move on to getting the upper control arm broke loose and getting the strut out up at the top. Alright, so now we have the sway bar end link taken off. We have the ABS right here and disconnected. The sway bar end link was a 15 millimeter. The ABS is a 10 millimeter. And then now we're going to work on this upper control arm ball joint. Right here, you're going to loosen up this nut and get you a little bit of a gap between the spindle and the nut. And then we're going to hit right here with a 2-pound hammer till this breaks loose and falls down. This nut right here is a 19 millimeter. See right there, it just separated, so now we know that our ball joint is loose, and our upper control arm will now come up and out of the spindle. Now that our upper control arm ball joint is loose, the next thing that I'm going to do is work on the 3 bolts that are right up here on the top of the strut, where it's held into the frame at. If we look at it up here from up under the hood, there's a couple things that we've got to get pulled off of the nuts because they're sitting on the studs and holding wiring. So we just simply lift those up and off, and then we'll be able to work on getting those nuts off. Alright, so I got both nuts off of the alignment bolts on both sides of the upper control arm, and then I worked the suspension down and pulled the upper part of the strut mount out, so then that way I could get these alignment bolts slid out behind the strut back here. So that made that real easy. And then now we're pulling out our upper control arm, which will not be reused because we have the brand new KSP Performance aluminum ones. And we've got our strut mount out here, so we can put now our spacer plate on top of here and install it. So I want to show y'all something on this strut spacer right here. First off, the big 3 holes there that go onto the strut mount, just like that, those are not the same span apart. So if you go to put on your strut spacer and it doesn't go on, rotate it to the next position and then try to set it on your studs. And then the other thing that I want to show you is that since this orientation is different from the orientation of the spacer, you will have to get these 3 small holes in the same orientation as this was when you uninstalled it, when you pulled it out. So to hopefully save y'all some time, where this part number writing is, I found had to go up in this front corner. To get the orientation of this right, what I used was a pry bar. You do not have to compress your coil spring in order to get this to rotate. You can simply put a pry bar in here and put pressure on it and then rotate this around however you need to get it to the proper orientation to install your spacer. Now on my truck, I never had to disconnect it from the lower control arm. I left the lower control arm connected, I left my CV axle connected, and I left my tie rod connected. So now I'm going to get these 3 nuts tightened down, and then I'm going to get my new upper control arm slid in and get the bolts pushed in while I have good room to get my hands back here and get that started. Then I'll push this up and in and get those upper bolts in, and this side will be getting close to done. Alright, on these upper control arms, they will have a left and a right stamping in them. And then you will have to install a grease zert onto these sections here where the bushings are going to go. And then all these bushings have to get pressed in, and they supply a silicone grease for you to put onto the bushing and press into the control arm. So we're going to get these assembled so then we can put these onto the truck. Also, on these KSP Performance ball joint caps, you will have to take a rubber O-ring and install it into this groove section on the cap, so then it will press in and snap in to the upper part of the ball joint. So now we have the polyurethane bushings, grease zerts, and the sleeves installed into the new upper control arms. I'll shoot grease in there in a little while. So now you want to install your upper control arm. This is for the left side. So you'll have to push back on your strut, and you'll have to get your upper control arm to slide in. Okay, the back one's going in and the front one's going in. So then you'll want to take your bolt and get it back behind here and slid in. So I've got the upper control arm in. I've greased up the ball joint and added grease to both of the zerts for the upper control arm bushings. Made sure those were good and full of grease. You don't want those polyurethane bushings squeaking. And then of course our strut is installed along with the upper spacer. So of course you're going to need an alignment once this is all done. Something else that I did is I took my tie rod and I loosened up the jam nut, and I lengthened the tie rod, because when you lift your vehicle, your tie rod in effect is going to get shorter because now it's at an angle. So if you want to help out the alignment shop just a little bit and not have your new wheels and tires, you know, towed way in, like in my case, then you're going to want to lengthen that tie rod just a little bit. So I just went 2 rounds, and that's all that I did. Now on this sway bar end link, once it's installed and I put in that top bushing, I'm having a hard time getting enough threads to even start my nut. It's really hard to get on there and get aligned just right to have enough threads. So I really wish that KSP had longer threads on this bolt to make it easier. So I'm probably going to have to tighten this on up once the vehicle is on the ground with weight on it and my sway bar end link is at a better angle. So up here for the ABS line, it's kind of tight trying to get this thing over here, I guess because of the thickness of the control arm. So what I'm going to have to do is grab onto the actual control arm and the bracket and put a squeeze on it just to get this screw started. So just to show you, I'm putting a pair of channel locks on here to squeeze this bracket over, and then got this Allen that is supplied with the control arm in, so then I can tighten it down and then it'll hold the ABS line. But it's kind of hard to get it over there. So there's the screw there and the ABS line fully installed. I also put just a dab of blue Loctite on that screw just to keep it, you know, from backing out. So here's a first look at it. The truck got all fogged up because the humidity is like 200% out here. But here's a look at it. That thing looks so tough. I'm gonna get some better shots of it when I have some better weather and have it all cleaned up. All right, y'all, check it out. Here's how the truck is looking now. So like I showed you, we went up 3 inches in the front and 2 inches in the back according to this kit. And I'm about to put a tape measure on it, and we're gonna get a measurement as to how high up our wheel well is off of the concrete. I'm super happy though with how this thing looks. I'm gonna insert here right quick a couple pictures of when I first picked it up. And then look at it now. This thing has made a huge transformation. Absolutely huge. So let me show you all these tires that I got. So the tires that I went with are a 305 4522. These are the Nitto Recon Grappler ATs. They also have a 55,000 mile warranty, and they have a real nice and aggressive tread pattern, but they ride down the road really smooth. Again, the wheels are a 22 by 10 on a -19mm offset. And for those wondering, yes, they rub a little bit, so I will be making some room up here. They do not hit the sheet metal at all back here, but they try to rub a little bit right in here, and they rub just a little bit on the front, not too much though. I probably need less than 1 inch of clearance in the front, and I probably need a good inch of clearance back here in the back. So y'all have probably seen a lot of videos of the NorCal mod and how to make room back here, pulling out the fender liner, doing a little trimming of the sheet metal back here and then folding it in. So I'm going to do that on this one and get me a little bit of room. And then I should be able to turn lock to lock without rubbing at all. And I clear my front air dam and front bumper cover just fine. And when we look down the side of the truck, it does have a little bit of poke. It sticks out, not quite the whole outer tread block, but I would say over half of it. And it also sticks out some back here in the back. So I like that because that gives it an aggressive look. We'll look at it back here from the back. So they poke out about the same on the front and on the back of the truck. I really like the look because it has a good aggressive look. And the tires, being a 305 wide, are nice and wide. They're rated at 32.8 inch tall and 12 inches of width. And I would say the width is about right. On the height, on the tape measure, they come out to 32.4 inches tall. And that's not uncommon for things to run a little bit small. On a lot of your 33 by 12.5s, I put a tape measure on them whenever I do the tuning on those trucks. And when I put a tape measure on them, oftentimes they only measure 32 inches tall. So they're a good bit shorter than 33 inches. So up front, we're looking at over 40.5, but not quite 40 3/4 on the ground to the bottom of the front fender. So the front is just barely over 40.5. And back here in the back, I would say that we're about 40 3/4. It's showing that we're only about a 1/4 inch taller in the back than we are in the front. It sits almost level, but you can just kind of tell that it looks like the back end might sit a hair higher. I can report that with those Bilstein rear shocks, they are not maxed out. So if I pull up on the truck at the back bumper, I can still get more upward lift, so they are not out of travel with a 2-inch lift, even though they're rated at a 0 to 1 inch lift. And they do ride good. Y'all don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget to ring that notifications bell and drop me a comment about what you think of this lift and these wheels and tires that you saw in today's video. Also, feel free to share these videos with your friends and pass them along. I sure do appreciate all the support. I might take and do a video of making room and clearance for these bigger wheels and tires and these wheel wells. Y'all leave me a comment. Let me know if that's a video you'd be interested in seeing. Comment down below with any questions, and don't forget that in the video description is all the links to all the parts that you saw in today's video. Thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you on the next video.